All right, let's get right into it. If you're a Canadian researcher working with human data, this is one you absolutely need to hear. We're talking about a real minefield of words, a place where one wrong term on your ethics application can cause some serious, serious headaches.
You know, most of us, we work on this one big assumption. It's just common sense, right? You've got your spreadsheet, you delete the name column, and boom, done. The data is anonymous, it's safe. It feels right, doesn't it?
Well, what if I told you that simple belief could be putting not just your research, but your participants at risk? Yeah, today we're going to blow that assumption right out of the water. We need to talk about the huge difference between an anonymized and de-identified data. And trust me, getting this right could completely change the game for your next ethics review.
And look, to show you this isn't just about splitting hairs over definitions, let's kick things off with a story. A true story, actually, that pretty much destroyed the whole idea that this stuff is easy. Okay, picture this. It's 2008. Netflix wants to make its movie recommendations better, so they launch this big competition. They released this massive data set of movie ratings from almost 500,000 people. And, they did what they thought was the right thing. They stripped out all the obvious stuff, like names, and just put in random numbers instead. Seemed like a solid plan. They figured, hey, that's enough, right? Spoiler alert. They were so wrong. See, what researchers figured out pretty quickly is that your pattern of movie ratings, it's like a fingerprint, especially if you rate a few weird indie films. Turns out your taste in movies is way more unique than you'd ever imagine. So what did they do? They took the so-called anonymous Netflix data and just compared it to public movie reviews on sites like IMDb. They just matched up the patterns. And just like that, they could connect a supposedly anonymous user ID to a real person's public profile. Suddenly, they could see everything that person had ever watched. And this sent absolute shockwaves through the research world. It proved, once and for all, that just deleting the names, it is absolutely, positively not enough.
Okay, so to really get why that Netflix plan failed so badly, we have to get really specific with our words. We need to move past this vague idea of anonymous and start looking at what the experts call the identifiability spectrum.
So let's start with the big one, de-identification. Think of this as the big umbrella term. It's the main goal, right? The whole point is to remove the association between a person and their data. But, and this is key, there are a bunch of different ways to stand under that umbrella, and each one gives you a totally different level of protection.
Now this next one, pseudonymization, this is what most of us actually do, even if we call it anonymization. It's when you swap out John Smith for something like participant 001. It's super useful during a study, but here's the catch. You still have a master key somewhere, a file that links 001 back to John Smith. Because that key exists, the data isn't really anonymous. And for all you Canadian researchers out there, this is crucial. Under our own Tri-Council policy statement, TCPS2, this is what's called coded or de-identified data. It is not anonymous.
So what is true anonymization then? Well, this is the final step. This is where you don't just replace the names with codes, you also take that master key and you destroy it. Poof, gone. The link is permanently, irreversibly broken. Now, this is different from anonymous data, which is data that never had names on it in the first place, like a random street poll. Anonymization is something you do to data to get it to that highest, most protected state. And this chart here just lays it all out so clearly. You can really see the trade-off, can't you? If you just pseudonymize, sure, re-identification is possible, but that also means you can recontact people if you need to. Perfect for long-term studies. But once you anonymize, that's it. It's irreversible. You get the absolute best privacy, but you lose all of that utility, that flexibility to go back.
So, that raises a big question, doesn't it? Why is it so darn hard to achieve that true anonymization? Well, it all comes down to this really fascinating idea called the mosaic effect. The idea is that even seemingly harmless little pieces of data, things that aren't a name or a SIN number, can be combined to identify someone. We call these quasi-identifiers. Think of it like this. A single blue puzzle piece doesn't tell you much, but once you start putting it together with other pieces, a picture starts to form. And sometimes, that picture points directly to one specific person.
Just how powerful is this effect? Well, groundbreaking research from LaTanya Sweeney at Harvard came up with a number that is, honestly, it's just shocking. 87%.
So what is that? That's the percentage of the U.S. population that can be uniquely identified using just 3 pieces of information: their zip code, their full date of birth, and their sex. 3 things.
And don't think this is just a US problem. The same thing applies right here in Canada. You collect a full postal code, a date of birth, and a gender, and for a huge chunk of your participants, you've basically just collected their name without even knowing it.
Okay, so this is all a little scary, right? So what do we do about it? How can we actually share our data and make it useful for other researchers without throwing our participants' privacy out the window?
Well, it really is a balancing act. It's a trade-off between privacy on one hand and the data's utility, its usefulness on the other. The goal is to find that perfect middle ground. You want to make the data just a little less specific, just fuzzy enough to protect people, but not so fuzzy that it's useless for analysis. And there's a whole field dedicated to this, called statistical disclosure limitation.
And a couple of the most common tricks of the trade are generalization and suppression. Generalization is just what it sounds like. You make the data more general. So instead of age 34, you say age 30 to 39. Instead of a full postal code, you just use the first 3 letters, the forward sortation area. And then there's suppression. This is where you look for the real outliers, that one participant who's 102 years old in a tiny town, and you just delete their record, because leaving it in is basically pointing a giant neon sign at them.
All right, so let's bring this all home. Where does this all become your direct personal responsibility as a researcher? Well, it all boils down to one single critical piece of paper, your consent form.
I want you to be honest with yourself. How many of us have written this exact line or something very close to it in our consent forms? We've all seen it. We send it off to our research ethics board, our REB, thinking we're making a clear, honest promise.
But here is the trap. The second you promise anonymity, you are promising to destroy that master key. But what do most of us do? We keep a master list on a secure drive so we can link codes back to names, maybe for a follow-up study, right? Well, the moment you do that, the data is not anonymous. It's de-identified or pseudonymized, and this isn't just playing with words. To your RAB, that's a broken promise. It's a massive ethical distinction, and they take it very, very seriously.
Okay, so let's boil this all down. 3 key things you need to walk away with. Number 1, check your language. Seriously, go pull up your old ethics applications. Did you promise anonymity when what you really meant was confidentiality? Use the right word. Number 2, the 3-variable rule. Never forget it. Postal code, date of birth, and gender together are a loaded gun. Be so careful. And number 3, don't be a hero. If you're dealing with really sensitive data, don't try to DIY this stuff. Talk to a data steward at your university or a librarian. They know about this. It's called statistical disclosure control.
Ask for help. And that really brings us to the final question, the one we want to leave you with to think about. Take a hard look at your own work. Is your current data practice truly protecting your participants, or is it just giving everyone the illusion of privacy? Because at the end of the day, their safety is our most important job.